Hut, and a good afternoon and a happy Thurby here on Derby Week, Kentucky Derby 149. Nick Hines, it's great to be back here on My Racehorse Live, and so happy to be joined by my partner, of course, racing manager for My Racehorse Edge, Joe Moran. Good day to you, sir.
Good day, Nick. Exciting week of just racing in general. I mean, this is, say, one of the reasons why we're in the sport, right? To have a horse that's running this week, hopefully in the big one, but even having a horse that can compete in one of the big races this weekend is what it's all about.
Absolutely. And big congratulations going out to Chasing Time. Finished a gallant third earlier today under the Twin Spires. A nice way to kick off the week. Of course, 63 caliber. She's going to be taking on some grade one competitors on Friday in the La Troienne. We're going to get to that during this show. We're also going to take a walk down memory lane, but we've got a special guest for you as well in Larry Rivelli, and he'll be putting a saddle on two fills. The first Saturday in May, of course, a chance of a lifetime and a lifetime of chance. There's so many phrases that go with the greatest 2 minutes in sports. Joe, I want to reflect again, real quickly, going back to 2020, a difficult year. We're still kind of working our way out of the pandemic. And I know that you, in attendance, of course, with our CEO and founder, Michael Behrens, and operations manager, Joe Mishak, talk to us a little bit about that day. Authentic, and of course the lead up and the feeling that went through your soul. I mean, how was it that day?
Yeah, well, it was exciting, the whole lead up process. Of course, that year, due to timing with the Derby pushed back to September, all the training was taking place during Del Mar. It was just such an empty backstretch and front side every day of training. It was quite amazing, but it was pretty awesome from my standpoint as well, being able to really kind of have that one-on-one time with Bob just in the mornings and other owners that were there. It was very interesting to see that behind the scenes part. And then when you come on Derby Day, it would have been great to have all the owners out there with us at Churchill Downs. It was my first time at a Kentucky Derby, and it to be empty like that was interesting. But I mean, just the excitement that day brought was something that I'll never forget.
Yeah, undoubtedly, truly a wonderful day. And I remember being right here in Southern California at my home with my family and seeing the joy and the jubilance of not only the My Racehorse team and those that were in attendance, but of course the late great Wayne Hughes, and we will forever appreciate all that he brought to My Racehorse. And again, took him to the top of the mountain to get there and win a race that certainly will be forever memorialized. Then go on to become Horse of the Year. Authentic, certainly a horse that put a stamp on what My Racehorse is all about. Shout out to Patty Reeves. Of course, both Patty, her husband Dean, in a partnership with My Racehorse as well. Appreciate you tuning in. For those at the party, the Churchill Downs event, having a good time. Weeze Barili, I know where you are. I know who you are. Appreciate you tuning in as well. Well, Joe, we're going to reminisce a bit later on in the show. We're also going to talk tickets for the Kentucky Derby. I know that you and I put together a pick five, an all-star ticket, if you will, and I was so. I guess I felt I needed to put together a superstar effective. But let's welcome in our special guest. And in moments like this, and a week like this, obviously the Kentucky Derby is full of events and throughout the week. But the man, the king of Chicago, a.k.a. Larry Rivelli, thanks for joining us here on Thurby, my brother.
You got it, bud. How you guys doing?
We're doing great, Larry. You just quickly touch on your career. Obviously, a career that kicked off back in year 2000, turn of the century, and you've amassed already in excess of 1,700 wins. But tell us a little bit about your career up until this point. Of course, you're essentially at the apex. We obviously met numerous times at sales. You were very kind to have rolled out the red carpet at the closure of Arlington Park, which certainly was near and dear, not only to my heart, but those in racing, but even more importantly to you. So talk to us a little bit about your background and what this week means to you.
Well, Nick, it's pretty cool, as you would, getting to this point. It's a Super Bowl from starting out. I'm third generation trainer. My grandfather, Pete DeVito, and my uncle, Jimmy DeVito, were trainers, California, bigger circuits, and back in the day, way before our time, and started out in 1999, 2000, I believe it was. Had one horse that I actually bought from my uncle. Won my first race at Prairie Meadows. It was a $4,000 claimer. And quickly realized that not many people remember who runs second. They only remember who won. So I kind of, got to learning the ropes faster than faster than probably most people. And my stable's evolved. I mean, I've had the same help for 18, 17, 19 years, even some from when I first started, which is a big deal. In this game, you could probably attest to that. But yeah, I mean, we've grown, we've evolved. A big stable, as big as I want it right now. And when Arlington shut down, all my owners are pretty much my friends. And we geared up every year for Arlington. And now there's no more Arlington. So now we gear ourselves towards better horses instead of having one for every spot. We had a 10,000 and never went 2 for 25 an allowance horse, a stake horse, this, that, and the other. Now we're just, concentrating on less horses, more quality, so to say, but it doesn't always end up that way. You can, that from going to the sales, we can spend as much as we want on them, and doesn't mean they're going to be any good.
No, absolutely.
Well, Larry, on that note, two Phils, this is your first Derby contender. When was the moment that you really thought that this horse was this quality of horse? And obviously that last race was really the stamp, you would say. But I mean, obviously he showed many glimpses of talent before that and a successful stakes competitor prior. But when was the moment you knew he was this type of horse?
When he won at Churchill in the mud, the way that he won, I thought in my mind that we would, be able to move forward. Now I was trying to be strategic, and I would have looked like an idiot by going in this race, because the whole knock on the horse when he was at the sale was he didn't work any good because he didn't like the poly track. And I kept trying to find this spot where I thought we could get in that would be the easiest route instead of having, ducking all the heavy heads. And it ended up being where Wesley and Todd had a pretty good horse in there. And, once we were in. I couldn't turn back. And he ran an all-time high number, sheet number, buyer. And like the jury, like I said, the jury's kind of still out whether the poly moved him up that much more or he's just getting better. But honestly, he is improving. He's getting better. His workouts have been better. He seems to be growing in front of my eyes, and sleeps all day, eats everything, ships good, and, just an ultimate pro. And I'd like to take a lot of credit for that, being the trainer, but it's just sometimes it's just bred into him, and it's our job to not mess it up.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a great story. Obviously knowing that Phil Sagan, the breeder of the son of Hardspun, and Joe, obviously the manager for Edge Racing, is I advise along with him in addition to MyRacehorse. So Hardspun, incidentally, has been kind of a marquee stallion for what we've done. So we're obviously a big fan, and once again appreciating you coming on board today. But when you look at the management technique here, the fact you've had a horse that won at Colonial, won at Canterbury, has won at Churchill, has won at Turfway Park, would you deem this horse as a throwback of sorts? I mean, obviously, Larry, you may have been training since just 2000. You mentioned you're a third-generation horseman. Does this horse kind of give you a throwback vibe as to his personality and his training characteristic?
Actually, Nick, he does. I mean, he's run a lot for his age, compared to these days. And he's just, and I hate to even say it, he's been an unbelievably sound, strong, healthy horse the whole trip. So he is a little bit of a throwback in that sense, that I really haven't had many issues with him. Now picking the spots and, training them however, everyone's got their own style and way to do things. And like I said, it's at the end of the day, you could be the greatest race car driver in the world, and you got a Pinto and I got a Corvette, and I'm gonna run by you every time. You could, you know what I mean? It's just one of those things. Right. You got the athlete, you got the horse. Every trainer's got a different style, and my hat's off to the big guys, Pletcher and Cox and those guys. They've got several shots at it. We've got one, so hopefully we can make it happen.
How many horses do you currently have under your care?
Probably 75 to 80, right around there. And, babies on the farm and mares of different sorts coming and going. And, a couple of them don't make it as young horses. We turn them out and bring it back. But I would say between 70 and 80.
As far as the story, quickly, obviously Patricia's Hope, maybe you can enlighten us on that ownership. We see many horses that are owned by Patricia's Hope. Phil Sagan having been the breeder, how did that partnership come to fruition?
Phil Sagan was the breeder. Jerry LaSala, who used to be a former jockey in Chicago, who I used to ride when I first started, is now retired. Who was friends with Phil Sagan. I didn't know the Sagans at all. I was at that OBS sale. I forget which one it was, April or March of 2020, I think. Yeah, it would be, right. And then I'm doing my thing, looking at horses, and Jerry calls me. Larry, you got to go look at this horse, hip number, blah, blah, blah. I go run over there. Looks okay, Jared. Nice horse, but work 10 and 2. You know, everyone's working 9 and 3 and 9 and 4. And this is a perfect example of horses like that at the sale. He just didn't want to run an eighth of a mile, Nick. You know what I mean? You know that. And I looked at him, looks good, but I had my own agenda. I'm looking for the 9 and 3s, 9 and 4s. And turns out that the consignor told him originally when the horse was working on the dirt at the farm, this horse is going to bring a lot of money. He's really training great. Well, he kind of stubbed his toe at the work, and they were going to get about 100,000, maybe less. And Anthony Sagan asked the consignor, I think it was Jimmy Gladwell, which is really a nice, honest thing for them to do, and they told him, hey, look, if it was me, I'd keep him. I wouldn't sell him cheap. So Jerry called me. He said, Larry, I know you do good with 2-year-olds. These guys want to turn this horse into money somehow, so get them to win. And as well as I do, you get them to win at Prairie Meadows or Canterbury or Hawthorne or Churchill, someone's going to call you regardless. It's just a difference of the venue where you win at and how much money you'll get for it. Well, I liked him so much. I worked him a couple of times and he worked really good. And I kept him in house and sold him to my buddy and my family, my close. These people I'm real tight with. And the rest is history. Anthony the Sagan stayed in for 20%. And then just not too long ago, sold 10 of his 20% to Saul Coleman, Madacat Stables, who he likes to jump in at the end. And he's going to be a fun addition to our crew.
Joe? I'm going to jump in here. I want to kind of get into the race a little bit. Anytime you have a 20-horse field, a lot comes down to trip. We draw post 3 in this field of 20. Myself, personal opinion, going back, watching a lot of his replays, he seems like a pretty easy horse that he can be spotted in different types of places. He's got tactical speed where he showed that early in his career sprinting. But as he's developed, he's come from off the pace and handled that as well. Where's a perfect position that you kind of see him in this race navigating traffic?
Originally I was looking for a 9, 10, 11, 12, somewhere out there. When they drew 3, I was kind of like, shit, we were looking at each other like, but then I saw the way they drew the 2-horse and the 6 and the 7 or the 5 and the 6. I can't remember. They look like they'll be the pace of the race. So I was eventually going to have to navigate down because I like to keep him covered up. He likes to run behind, whether he's laying 2nd, 3rd, 4th, or 5th. Doesn't really matter as long as he's covered up. And he'll come off the bit and he relaxes that way. So I'm thinking now those horses just get away and Jarrett doesn't have to navigate down. Just stay in the 3 path or stay in the 4 path or just try not to get where they come down on you on the turn and, shove you all the way to the rail. That's my only fear. And I'm hoping that we hold our ground. And I don't think those, the Tapit Trices and the Fortes, they're not going to be able to cross our face from out there. They're going to have to drop back at some point.
Love it.
Larry, just one last question here. Obviously, the story, Jarrett Loveberry, in fact, it's a couple of questions, but it's a little unorthodox for a horse to train at Hawthorne and run the first Saturday in May. But I kind of get the feeling, as a former trainer, you want to keep this horse essentially in his comfort zone, if you will, under the friendly confines of Stickney, Illinois, knowing that is your home base. But what went into the mindset there as far as keeping him there as opposed to working him at Churchill, in addition to the fact that, you came back with the story of Jarrett Loveberry? I think that's a tremendous story in its own right, but I applaud you. There's an old saying that you got to dance the girl that took you there. I know Jarrett had won multiple graded stakes on this horse, but was there any thought at any point to make a rider change? And what went into the thought of training the horse at Hawthorne versus shipping him to Churchill with a workout over the strip?
Well, first off, yeah, with the Hawthorne thing, as soon as we won the Jeff Ruby, it instantly went through my mind, how soon do I bring this horse over, and get him acclimated and all this other stuff. And the fact that he's won there, and Hawthorne's training surface is fantastic. And I know the track, right? Churchill, I don't know. I got some advice from Wesley Ward, who's a good buddy of mine. Said, Riv, stay right where you're at. Don't do nothing different. Don't start thinking outside the box. You come here, you run your horses here every year, you win every year. Where do you do it from? He said, Hawthorne. So just stay right there, because I watch these horses train here. You don't need to be breathing. You just stay where you're at. And it was great advice. And I took it, and I was probably it's what I wanted to hear anyway. So it was great advice. And I mean, look, the horse that Breeze and got hurt and euthanized, and another one's out now. And I heard through the grapevine today that something major might be happening, but I'm not going to say it might be just hearsay. But horses are, horses, the atmosphere that I know at home, and the horse didn't have to leave his barn. I just figured it would be better to stay at home.
Yeah, well, obviously there's been a lot of news in the media. As you well know, 2 horses have now defected out of the Kentucky Derby, as it was announced, practical move. Obviously, the situation with Safi Joseph Jr., and now they've ruled, I guess, CDI has ruled that he can no longer race at any of the CDI tracks. But that's another time, another place, Larry Rivelli. Well, yeah. Joe, unless you had any other further questions, I guess all we have to tell you, my friend, is good luck. We're rooting for you. We can't thank you enough for coming on My Racehorse Live to talk Derby here on Thurby.
And love Barry, never a doubt. I'm a loyal to a fault guy, Nick. I ain't switching. He got us there, rode the horse. I had a million phone calls, and it's just not who I am. And neither, same with the owner. It'd be the same thing. You get a Derby horse, and now the guy wants to give him to Pletcher or somebody else. He's got good people behind you. You stick with your people. And listen, if he rides the worst race of his life, no one's going to point the finger. No one's going to say nothing to him. It'll be business as usual. Like, everybody's happy to be here, and it's really not much pressure on me either, which is good. You would know from being a trainer yourself.
Well, Larry,
I wish you were training now, so I could sit on the couch and call you and say, am I betting on this, or what am I doing?
You're the greatest. I tell you, for a man that's won over $36 million in purse earnings, 1,700 races, you're one cool individual, the Riv. Larry Rivelli, ladies and gentlemen. Bottom line, Larry, we appreciate it, but more importantly, enjoy yourself and safe travels to you, your people, and of course, 2 Phils. We'll be rooting for you come Saturday.
Thanks, guys.
Good luck, Larry.
Yeah, I mean, what can I tell you? I mean, that guy's cool as the other side of the pillow, Joe.
That's what it's all about. I mean, you could tell he loves it and everything about it, and I mean, those are the people you like to root for in the game, loyal and everything like that. It makes it fun.
Yeah, and again, you're right. I mean, and I was told years ago, dance the girl that took you there. And that pertains to all things, I think, in horse racing too, because, you may kind of find a place and time where your chips are down, but, there's that time where they're going to swell upward and the luck's going to come back in your favor. You just have to kind of, stick to your guns. But big thank you to Larry Rivelli, and appreciate so many of who've sent in questions. Again, this is a live show here on Thurby, and we've got a question here from Favir Funny Farm. And I'm going to post this question to you. Does synthetic surface make a big difference in speed and pace? Now, I think that's pertaining to speed and pace figures, but maybe you can answer both sides of the equation.
Yeah, well, I would love to get your insight as well, given that you've actually trained horses over a synthetic surface yourself. Mm-hmm. So I think you'll be able to provide a little more insight than me personally.
Right.
But when you watch these races, I mean, obviously, I think on my side of things, paying attention to Northern California, most importantly, more than, say, Turfway Park or even Woodbine. I do pay attention to Woodbine as well. But from a speed and pace situation, I think it's a little bit more from a consistency standpoint, when the track is good, the track can be pretty consistent where it doesn't change a lot. But I think the natural dirt's going to be a faster track and a quicker track than that synthetic. I think you see a lot of times that speed on the synthetic doesn't hold as much as maybe it does on the dirt. But if you want to kind of add to that, that's my personal opinion from that standpoint. I mean, we see it all the time, especially a lot of people think once they start routing, and even if they get on a comfortable pace, you see it all the time, a 48 half mile on going a mile at Golden Gate, and the pace from behind still comes. So it's an interesting dynamic and actually a very interesting question.
Yeah, and again, I think the other component you're dealing with, and we know the synthetic tracks are like you got brand names. You got Polytrack, you got Tapeta, we had the Cushion track. We got Safe Track at Ocala where these horses breeze. And it was interesting to hear Larry Rivelli kind of talk about Two Phils when he breezed over the strip there at Ocala. He worked 10-2, and according to the consignor, Two Phils wasn't himself on that synthetic track. So that's the other aspect. Yourself, me, Roderick Watchman, Brian DiDonato, who works with us in operations at Edge. We're having to kind of differentiate when certain horses aren't necessarily taking to the synthetic track. So you have to kind of read between the lines. So in regards to speed and pace, does synthetic make a big difference? I think it does. And I think that a lot of it, when you talk cooler climate, because of the poly fibers, the wax material, when it's cooler, just like back in the day, the Hollywood Park nights that we had over Cushion track, speed would be pretty predominant, and it would be very difficult to make up ground. Say, for example, Woodbine, when the climate is cooler, generally kind of plays toward a speed favoring track. But when you look at Two Phils, he won at Turfway Park in the Jeff Ruby Stakes on March 25th. And I thought he overcame kind of a modest pace of 47 4.5, and was able to come home quite nicely there. So visually, he was very impressive, and to the point that I think he's a throwback. But it's a very good question. I think from a handicapping standpoint, and Joe, you can maybe agree or disagree, or agree to not disagree, but from a handicapping perspective, I actually prefer horses going from synthetic to dirt versus dirt to synthetic. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I guess in this particular case, knowing that he's proven on the dirt previously and coming off that synthetic, it doesn't worry me at all. Mm-hmm. If this was a debut on synthetic and jumping into stakes company, maybe it would be a little bit different story to me. But I'm with you. I mean, I guess the biggest question, him going into that Jeff Ruby, I was a little more second guessing him going into the Jeff Ruby and how he would handle the synthetic track that day than I do now. When he proved that, I thought he ran great. It was kind of interesting hearing Larry's assessment of when he thought he became a real horse, because the race I keep going back to is the Street Sense with him, and I thought he was ultra impressive. It was a 2-year-old number, so even though it was a 79 buyer speed figure, to me that was kind of the race that I said, wow, this horse can run. And I think it's a big factor winning over the racetrack already. Sloppy track, we all know First Saturday of May can be a little bit sloppy as well.
Right.
To me, I think he's a major fit there.
Yeah, the fact I didn't necessarily bet him in the Jeff Ruby Stakes, but I'm sure if I called Larry and says, hey, what do you think this horse is going to do on synthetic? It would have been interesting to hear him say, well, when he worked on the Safe Track, the synthetic at OBS, hated it. Well, there you go. What a nice horse. And once again, a big thank you to Larry Rivelli for coming on board. It's amazing to think that in 23 years, Joe, that his performance has amassed in excess of $36 million. It's a lot of money in a short amount of time. Yeah. And he's like essentially at the apex of his career right now, if you look at his statistics. All right. Well, again, this Derby show, as we talked about Kentucky Derby Saturday, of course, we're going to touch on 63 caliber Oaks Day Lilies for the fillies on Friday and the Grade 1 La Troienne. But the show wouldn't be appropriate if we don't talk about Authentic, because, again, he's likely the horse, the flagship that has made so much of this possible. And it's crazy to think that it's already been 3 years in that year in which the Kentucky Derby was pushed back due to the pandemic. But, over 5,300 owners being involved had the opportunity to say that they own a Derby winner. Joe, What was it like? What was it like to be there? And obviously, you're a young guy. Obviously, your father's been in the game for years. The Kentucky Derby, the greatest 2 minutes in sports. How did it feel?
Yeah, it was amazing. That's why I think every time we go to these sales and we bring home a new horse, whether it's a yearling or a 2-year-old, I mean, you're buying at least a colt from that factor or a gelding that he can run in the Kentucky Derby. And when you walk into there and you see the grandstand and see how big Churchill Downs really is, and as I mentioned earlier, it was a very strange dynamic because it was empty, so you could hear every sound. And it just felt like your nerves were beating even more than ever in that moment. And I'll never forget, came through the paddock. We had the incident of 1,000 words flipping in the paddock, and it was just so much going on that you were sitting there saying, oh my goodness. At the same time, there was a lot of questions of Authentic, right? No one thought he could get the distance. It's not like we were a lock going in there. So there was a lot of nerves going in there as well. And I'll never forget Michael Behrens, Joseph Mishak, and I were sitting down by the wire, almost like on the rail. And we decided, you know what, we're at the Derby. There's no one here. We can go wherever we want. We went on the second level to watch the race. And we had just an amazing view of the race and watching the race play out. And then there was that great clip of us that got caught on NBC. And I think it was just the pure raw emotion of you couldn't believe it was actually happening. And even just getting there was an accomplishment alone. And then for that to happen was just something special.
Well, it's crazy to think that even prior to that, I remember in the springtime when the conversations came up because Wayne Hughes had presented the opportunity for MyRacehorse to get involved in 2 horses, Authentic and 1,000 words.
Yeah.
So just the irony of the fact that 1,000 words, unfortunately, he reared in the paddock and ended up being a scratch. And in fact, he came back in the Preakness and the Grade 1 Malibu, essentially was never the same. But it just stands to reason when you talk about fate. And you talk about the perfect storm, you talk about the opportunity. But, I think for all of us at MyRacehorse, it was just a next level, essentially kind of an out-of-body experience. I mean, even for me, because knowing that, you and I have had our relationship for years. I've known you since you were 4. I felt as if I was there with you. And that, to me, certainly brought quite a few tears to my eye. But that was a great day indeed. And we will forever cherish that as part of MyRacehorse, of course, in a partnership with Spendthrift. All right. We've got a nice video clip for you. Let's and Hannah, big thank you to you for putting this show together here on Derby. Let's take a look and a listen and kind of a walk down memory lane.
They're all in line. We're ready for the start.
Number 18 is Authentic.
They're off in the Kentucky Derby.
John Velasquez, trainer Bob Baffert is second all-time in wins for the Kentucky Derby with 5.
Authentic did not break on the lead here. Tis the Law is out quickly.
Tis the Law. He is the heavy favorite.
And here he comes right up alongside of Authentic.
Speed is his weapon.
And they're into the stretch.
He can get out there and get in a nice rhythm. He'll be very tough.
Authentic is dragging in. Authentic, tis the Law. Here's the wire. Authentic has won the Kentucky Derby.
That was a big day there on September 5th, 2020, and Authentic would go on and in a tough beat loss there in the Grade 1 Preakness Stakes, defeated by just a neck. We'll go on to win the Grade 1 Breeders' Cup Classic, and what was a tremendous curtain call for him November of 2020. Earnings in excess of $7 million, and not only Spendthrift, Mataket, and the Starlight Racing partnership, it was certainly a run for the ages, Joe Moran.
Yeah, absolutely. I haven't actually seen that video. It feels like ages now. It feels like it's so long ago. But gosh, that was again got the chills a little bit watching that. But just a tremendous experience. I think just even talking to Riv again, circling back on it, just everything that has to go right to get to that moment and win that moment is pretty special. And I think it's just something that we take for granted sometimes in horse racing when things are going so good. And you see Practical Move, for example, this year spikes a temperature and misses the biggest race of his career. And you think of the connections, Tim Yakeen, that worked so hard and all the work it took to get to that moment and to miss that. So whenever we get these big opportunities and big races, you really see everything that has to go right with these equine animals. It takes a lot. It takes a team and an army to make it happen, but you never forget days like that.
Yeah, and I think even, fast forward and backtracking to last year, having been involved with In Due Time, he would have gotten in the Derby with the scratch of Ethereal Road, which the scratch of Ethereal Road, in addition to In Due Time, prompted Rich Strike getting in the race and coming up with the unthinkable effort to win and paying $80 some odd. What a wild turn of events. And, we've heard Scuttlebug of some potential other scratches. We won't get into that, but that's, the old saying. Charlie Whittingham, he's my favorite trainer of all time. Might be Larry Rivelli now, but Charlie Whittingham once said that horses are like strawberries. They'd spoil overnight. And that's the thing. When you get to Derby week, everything needs to go just right. So, yep, authentic. We look forward to which will be in 2024, the newly turned 2-year-olds. And exciting to see his yearlings in the sales coming up this summer and fall. All right, Joe. Well, we've done enough reminiscing and talking, essentially kind of getting some insight from Larry Rivelli in regard to the dance on Derby Day. You know the drill. We've got an all-star pick 5 that's in the holster, if you will. Yeah. But the pick 5 beginning with the Grade 2 Pat Day Mile presented by Twin Spires on Saturday, and it's a stacked field, highly competitive, and I know that you and I had to sort out some numbers to come to a conclusion.
Yeah, well, I mean, when you come to a day like Derby Day, just handicapping the whole card, to me, it's almost like Breeders' Cup, right? It's like, for me, one of the days I try not, when I'm at the track every single day now, to handicap the races, because then I want to play a little something, support myself. Mm-hmm. But days like this, you get excited to pick up the racing form and handicap these races. And I think this race a few years ago, MyRacehorse actually had a competitor in here in Vertical Threat. So an exciting day in general. When I look at this race, I think there's a lot of different ways to go. My top pick, when you look at everything considering, you look at Steve Asmussen and Echo again, I kind of want to throw a question to you. When you look at the race 2 back, when this horse had to be pulled up and comes back with a big effort, granted an allowance race, and now comes back into this stakes company like this, how do you consider a race like that?
Oh, I think it was the perfect prep. I think that when you consider that you had the month of February off, you came back March 30th with a huge effort. Who knows what the issue was? Echo again added Lasix and then went on to a pretty nice score. Yeah. I think the thing that stood out most to me in mind was, for this being a 1-turn mile, there isn't much speed signed on. So I actually like Echo again quite a bit, because I think this son of Gunrunner is going to get enough breather, if you will. Granted, this horse didn't run well in the Iroquois at Churchill, but perhaps had an excuse that day. I have a suspicion there might be a bleeding or a breathing issue, but maybe Lasix has rectified. We went 4 deep, 1, 5, 6, 7 in the 8th to begin. And you see we scrolled all the way down to the Kentucky Derby. But your top choice here in the Pat Day Mile, who is it?
Well, I do like the Steve Asmussen runner, but I'm a little home court biased, and I might be stretching on the rail of Tim Yakeen. But this horse is watching this horse train, most recently training with Practical Move. I thought he held his own pretty darn good. And I'm going to say this is going to be an acid test beyond beliefs, but I'm going to say this is a freak of a cowbred, and use that word freak. I just think he is ultra talented. He's going to have to bring his A game plus. But I'm biased, and I think he's going to run a big race in here. He's got natural speed, breaking from the rail. I think he's going to be forced to go. And we'll just see how far he can last going the 1-turn mile.
All right. Well, let's take a quick look at the ticket, and then we're gonna move on. Obviously, we're gonna talk verbally about each race. I think the PPs that we have for you are just for the Kentucky Derby. So race 9 is the Grade 2 American Turf, and this one was a little difficult. I wanted to do our best to narrow it down to 2, but we ended up with 3 horses here in the 1, 5, and the 11. So as you take a look at the American Turf, the weather initially was supposed to be a little wet between Friday and Saturday. At last check, it seems it's just going to be overcast. Which direction were you laying in this particular race?
Yeah, not by coincidence, just going to look at the rail at Major Dude. Coincidence of talking about 2 fills, running behind 2 fills. I love this horse getting back on the turf. I feel like he's just really developed each and every race. He doesn't necessarily need a certain trip. I think he's just going to be spotted tactically enough. He's going to be able to be covered up, drawing the 1 post, and just hopefully he gets out. The Chad Brown runner, number 11, is certainly interesting. Going off a maiden win into this, I think it's always that class jump that is the biggest class jump that you got to take. And I like Johannes. I mean, I'm surprised he's 15-1 in here, but I'm going to have to stick with Major Dude as my top pick.
Yeah, I kind of had to wrestle you a little bit on Johannes, and I know that you questioned maybe what was behind him, but I thought the visual was there. And the man upstairs has a miraculous way of kind of making it right. And we know that Practical Move scratched. I think Kim Yachtine, this Johannes is deeply talented. He is owned and bred by the Kuyathi partnership. And I think he's very tactical. I also included the Chad Brown to the outside, who won 20 cents on a dollar at Gulfstream. Once again, not convinced that Carl Spattler beat much going the mile on turf. I don't think a mile and 16th will be an issue. But to your point, Major Dude for Spendthrift, certainly holding teeth. If you look at numbers, this race is wide open. We probably could have used a half a dozen horses here, but due to some constraint on what we were wanting to spend, we narrowed it down to 3. But I think Johannes would be a nice complement if you were to play maybe into some exotics as far as exactas and trifectas. All right, let's move on to the Churchill Downs. It's Grade 1. 7/8 is the distance. And as it was announced, Safi Joseph Jr. has been instructed to, well, all his horses have been scratched throughout the weekend. And essentially he has been deemed not able to race at CDI, unfortunately, in light of the 2 horses that unfortunately died. And it's just a kind of a scary situation knowing of the unknown, what happened exactly. But, our best wishes go out to the connections. Unfortunately, Lord Miles, who's owned by good guy Peter Vegzo, this is a dream that he'd had his entire life to have a horse to Kentucky Derby. Lord Miles will not be going postward. So Wida Barrio, I thought, was a huge scratch. CZ Rocket will now be on the rail, and a horse that's quote unquote been a reputed bleeder. But Cody's Wish, the feel-good story, Joe, of 2022, and of course he was the Vox Populi recipient. Ended up using a couple of horses here, but talk to me about Cody's Wish. You were bullish about singling this one, and I beat you out by including Endorse, and I'll tell you why in a minute.
Yeah, well, it's kind of funny because the last time we did one of these shows for I believe it was Florida Derby Day,
Right.
Endorsed was our pick to upset Charge It in that day, and we were right. So I guess we'll get to it. I think Cody's Wish is just the best horse in the race. He's 4 for 4 over the track, and I'm a firm believer at Churchill. Horse for course is a factor, and when you're 4 for 4, I think it really speaks volumes there. And he's just a classy individual. He is coming off the bench, but Mr. Mott is 24% off 180-plus day layoff. So I'm confident this one's going to be ready to roll. I just think he's the best horse in the field, and I'm confident there. And my question to you and Endorsed, is he just getting good, or was it the Gulfstream Park main track that he became very fond of?
Well, that's a very good question. I think the key component as to why I felt bullish having him on the ticket is the lack of pace. There's not much pace in this race, Joe. And, again, he is the now variety. He's won 3 straight. But staring me in my eye is the 0 for 6 mark at Churchill. So I'm a little, is he the horse? But then again, he should get a comfortable trip here. Cody's Wish, he's the class of the race. I'm sure it could be a single eliminating tickets. The other horse that kind of entered my thought process was 14 Hill for Paulo Lobo in the OXO. Interesting horse coming off the smart win at Keeneland. Love the way he finished up, but we kind of relegated this ticket down to the 2 horses. You and I have talked about Hoist of Gold in the past. You know, he's been going a long time. He hasn't won a race since February of last year. So I feel we're on the right track just using the 2 horses here. How about you?
I feel ultra confident. And there's nothing better than beating the 4-5 favorite, even though it is such a good feel-good story that I'd hate to see him lose. But from a gambling aspect, we always like to beat the big favorites.
All right, moving on to race 11, and this is the Grade 1 Turf Classic. They'll be going 1 1/8 on the turf course. We gave ourselves, a little bit of coverage here, and it's very necessary, if you will. Once again, great competitive race. These pick 5s, the pools are just immense. They, even if it were along the average price of, say, a 6-1, you're going to get a pretty hefty payout. So talk to me about a couple of horses that you liked in this spot. Obviously, we went 4 deep. Who's your top choice and why?
Yeah, I'm pretty bullish here on Hong Kong Harry. I know I think you're going to get value on him to boot with that last race being a little disappointing, finishing 4th. I just don't think the turf course was a good turf course that day. Not that they might not get a good turf course on Saturday. I just think this horse is going to respond with a big effort. I think the race dynamic's going to set up better for him, field size, everything like that. He's going to get pace to run into. He's going to get a good trip. And we're going to get Flavian Pratt returning in the irons. He's riding hot, won a couple of races today. But there's something about this. If I was betting one horse on the day, this is where I'm landing. I think Hong Kong Harry is going to fire with a big effort.
Well, he's never raced out of Southern California since he arrived stateside. And, the only turnoff for me was in the Kilroe. He was even money. Obviously, you're going to get way better than that. He's 7-2 on the morning line. If he comes back to his A game, you brought up the point that it does appear to be on paper that there is enough speed. Now, I don't think this race is flooded with speed, but I think the difference maker will be the fact that you're going to get a little real estate to work with here at 1 1/8. But as far as our ticket was concerned, we went 4 deep, the 3, 4, 5, and 7. An interesting horse here is Wolfie's Dynaghost. Go back, watch the race at Turfway in the Kentucky Classic. I know it was synthetic, but this horse has managed a couple of wins on turf. He is a 5-year-old gelded son of Ghost Sapper that since joining Jonathan Thomas's barn has run his fastest numbers. You get Johnny V back in the irons. If they let this horse get a breather, this would be my best price play of the day. So for as much as you like a Hong Kong Harry at 7-2 on the morning line, the consideration might be toss this horse at least into your exotics and whatnot. But, outside of that, the 5 up to the mark, this horse encountered some traffic trouble in the Grade 1 Maker's Mark. The only verdict here for me out is being the 1 1/8. But, Joe, we talked Hartsman earlier with 2 fills. This is the son of Not This Time. So we obviously have to keep up to the mark. Also have a new Not This Time in the lineup with Edge, which should be a fun run, along with a representative of Bloom Racing in Hiddenbrook. So we got to keep Not This Time. We got to keep those Not This Times on the ticket to kind of make ourselves happy, and then hopefully make you happy, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, not only this Todd Pletcher runner, but the other Todd Pletcher runner that we use. I mean, both deserve the respect. If
yeah,
I had to give one the upper hand, I'm kind of surprised there's only a 1-point difference in morning line odds up the mark, finishing 3rd in the Maker's Mark Grade 1 most recently. I thought that was a pretty bold class test for him coming out of allowance races, jumping right into the Grade 1, and he sure ran to me ultra respectable. So I'm a little more keen on him than steady on. I'm surprised you're only getting 1-point difference, but I think they're both must uses in this race.
But see, that's why I come back to Wolfie's Dynaghost. This horse beat steady on. Now, mind you, it was on synthetic, but beat that horse on the square. 10-1 looks just like too juicy of a number not to consider. All right, we move on to the granddaddy on Saturday. And, as mentioned, there is a possibility, word on the street, that there could be a big announcement being made. Not going to get into that because I don't want to be held to it. The Grade 1 Kentucky Derby presented by Woodford Reserve. This will be the 149th running, and just a long storied history of this particular race, as mentioned. And, it brings me back to the Dan Fogelberg song, The Chance of a Lifetime and a Lifetime of Chance. Truly a wonderful song, and I always listen to it on a daily basis leading up to the Kentucky Derby. But I know, Joe, that Practical Move, for obvious reasons, was a horse that both of us liked. He was earmarked at the OBS April sale last year. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get him, and we were rooting for him, but we also felt that he had a legitimate chance. So talk to me about a couple of the contenders here. Lord Miles, now scratched. Practical Move, scratched. So that means, Hannah, if you'd be so kind to scroll to the bottom of the screen, not only does Dale Romans get in with a horse that kind of has a curious look. I don't know from that pole position if it's possible, but Cyclone Mischief, Mandarin Hero, both going to get in the body of the race.
Yeah, it makes it very interesting. And the post position kills me because both of us liking Practical Move. If you like Practical Move, feel you had to like Mandarin Hero get into this race. But drawing that 20 post, it worries me a little bit. Watching this horse train pretty regularly, he's not the biggest horse. He honestly, and maybe I'm a little biased now because when he showed up at Santa Anita, I said, this is the horse everyone's been talking about. And all of a sudden, then watching the Santa Anita Derby live, I'm like, who is this horse flying? And it's Mandarin Hero. So I have a little soft spot to him. He's just a pure runner. I think that's the only way to explain him. But I do think he's going to have to overcome a very tough trip from that 20 post. But I will be rooting for the Connections and Kazushi Kimura, who we are both very fond of. He's the interesting one that draws in. We don't have him in our ticket, but I'm actually going to look towards the other Japanese of, hopefully I'm saying this right, Derma Sotogake.
Very good. Konnichiwa.
Wow. Gosh, thank
Konnichiwa.
you. I love that. This horse was kind of the buzz horse from the get-go after the UAE Derby, and I wasn't really sure. Obviously the race was ultra impressive there at Maidan. And then watching this horse work, actually, it was due to Kazushi of watching the Japanese's training tactics of what they want to see in their mornings. They're not looking for 59 and change works or 47 and change or anything like that. They're putting these steady drills into him. And I was just ultra impressed with his last work over the surface. So he's my top pick. It's been the last year or so of the Japanese. So why not take their first Kentucky Derby down? And I think this is the horse to do it. It's a pretty interesting pedigree to do it. But I've just been very impressed with what I've seen there. And then if I had to look one other way, it would be Angel of Empire, number 14. Again, I would say I wasn't on this horse going into the Arkansas Derby, and this horse has just gotten better and better each and every stride. And I think coming to the Kentucky Derby, you want to be on that upward trend, and I think this is the horse that's on the upward trend and could take another step forward.
Yeah, and you can see the bold type there, Sun Thunder, Two Fills, King Russell reincarnate. So there are some common bodied horses. And we're going to keep that frame right there. The horse just underneath, Forte, the champion, of course, 2-year-old of last year, trying to do what Street Sense did. He bucked a trend of a 2-year-old champion having never won the Kentucky Derby. And then, of course, fast forward to a Nyquist for trainer Doug O'Neill and Paul Redham. But Forte, it's been one of those where everyone tries to outsmart the process. And for me, I just think he's the best horse, pound for pound, the best talent. He overcame a terrible draw in post position number 11 in the Grade 1 Florida Derby, and he was kind of out of his element. But what I love about it is he ate a ton of dirt and got crowded into the first turn. And then once he was able to get in the clear, Mays swept by him. He could have easily just shut it down. But, he showed kind of another gear, another dimension. And this horse is certainly all about being the alpha male, if you will. Forte, I remember him vividly as a yearling. He was consigned by Eaton. I remember looking at him because we obviously have our barn assignments between yourself, me, Roderick, and our entire team. And I had Eaton. And this was a horse that, he was on the radar, but he obviously didn't make it quite where he needed to be, but Rivelli was buying up every horse, it seemed, on the docket. So Forte, a must use. And for me, as the saying goes, in order to be the champ, you got to beat the champ. And, if he's at his best, they're in for a long afternoon. Hannah, if you'd scroll up to horse number 11, this is my long shot for the Derby. And I just love the relationship that our trainer, Steve Asmussen, has with this arm. He's been schooling him all week with his son kind of flanked on the other side. The one thing that really stands out for this arm is that the last 3 races that he's had have all been merry-go-round races. Each of the winners have gone gate to wire. He's managed to pick horses up. He's been managed to finish. He gets Joel Rosario in the irons. Now, Joel hasn't had the best year yet, but I think if you're getting anywhere 30, 40 to 1 on this arm, anything around 30 to 1, he needs to be on your radar. You see Kings Barnes beat him, but Kings Barnes had an easy trip. I would have to presume that in the Kentucky Derby, it's going to get a little hot and heavy up top. Kings Barnes will not get that leisurely play pace that he had in the Grade 2 Louisiana Derby. So let's take one last look at that ticket. We did include our man, Larry Rivelli, and 2 fills. We had to, right? He's our special guest. 3, 11, 14, 15, 17. Anything that you wanted to add in regards to the Derby?
No, I guess disarm I think is very interesting. I was happening to just be watching the Churchill feed today, and they had Steve's son Eric did a spotlight on the horse, and Eric actually was part of the breaking process at Steve's father's farm in Laredo, Texas, and they just talked about how easygoing this horse was during the whole process. And I think that could be a key component when you come in the Derby, a big field. There's almost a guarantee you're going to have to overcome some type of trouble. And there's a lot of horses that trouble can take them completely out of their game. So to have a horse that's so mentally, I'll say, above their game, I think that can take a lot of things. And as you said, he's a horse that always just keeps coming and coming and coming. And I think that's a big advantage for him in the Derby. I mean, he's 3 to 1 for a reason. He's got to come with that big effort, but we've seen it plenty of times in the past in Kentucky Derby history that a long shot can come through. So it'd be exciting for the connections. And when you look at a pedigree like that, why is he not capable of doing it?
Yeah, and some would ask why we didn't have Tappet Trice, on our direct radar. This is my feeling with Tappet Trice. I believe that he could end up being favored just by way of the amount of buzz that he's gotten all week long. I'm just not convinced that he breaks all that well, and I think he's going to have to get the sweetest of trips to get up. I respect him. He's a son of Tappet, from Andy Pope, Whisper Hill, Gainesway. It'd be a tremendous tribute because she certainly spent a lot of money in this game. And Todd Pletcher's, he's loaded for bear, with 3 competitors in here and a horse that's won 4 straight. I just thought that might be a little too much wise guy money. And, I wanted to kind of add a little spice, as did you, Joe, in regards to, those price horses that we included there. So it's a $240 ticket on a confidence meter scale 1 to 10, Joe. 10 being the greatest. What's your confidence?
Oh gosh, don't give me that. I'm just saying. Yeah, 10. I guess if I wanted to play another backup version of it.
What do you mean backup version? What are you talking about?
What do you mean? You got to
backup version. What do you mean backup version?
I'm staying confident.
I like it. Is there any horse on the ticket that I didn't have that you wanted me to have?
Well, oh gosh, this kills me. I guess in the Derby, just because we like practical move, I think the Derby is extremely wide open this year. I mean, I
22. You wanted to add the 22.
22, if not, because I don't like that post position.
Right.
Is Skinner's right there with him, developing horse. John Sheriff's, they're getting better time after time.
Gotcha.
Again, I like your play on throwing out Tappet Trice. And if Tappet Trice is more outside, I'd like him a little bit better. But Skinner would be the other one that, just depending if post position was that key, I feel that race was a live race. That would be my only thing. But I'm confident in our ticket of what we have. We're spread enough in the Derby. Can't use them all, and you got to take a stand somewhere.
Well, I tell you what you can do if you're at home and watching this, and obviously these tickets that we put together, and I just shimmied together a Super Trifecta and keyed Forte. as far as Skinner's concerned, what you can do is use all the numbers we had in the first 4 legs, and you can single Skinner. That would be a saver play if you want to go in that direction. And he might just be the horse that is stepping up at the right time. And John Sheriff's no stranger to this race. He pulled up that shocker with Giacomo back in the day, and Skinner getting the new hands of Juan Hernandez, the leading rider at Santa Anita. So I respect that opinion, Joe. I think Skinner, you can see that I've used him here in the Superstar Trifecta. And as far as Forte, it all comes down to if he's at his best for me, I think he's the best horse come Saturday.
I'm with him. I mean, he's, like I said, got to beat the champion. He's the champion. I was ultra impressed in his last race. He had to overcome a lot and just keep plugging away. And I can't disagree with your opinion there.
All right, so they're going to give us a few extra minutes here. We kind of went a little waxing poetic with things, but we want to delve into the Grade 1 La Troienne. Reminder, Kentucky Derby, Saturday, race 12 on the docket out there at Churchill Downs. Approximate post time, 6:57 Eastern, 3:57 on the left coast, and 4:57 Central. You want to keep all eyes on NBC. I know some of you, knowing that I work with the FanDuel, by contractual obligation, we'll be only able to show you a replay on that. But you can make all your bets at tvg.com. All right, as we segue into 63 caliber for Friday, Daniel Thompson, he's asking, Joe, are you going to be at in Louisville?
Unfortunately, I'm not. I would say I'm in the sunny California, but it's a little bit rainy today and overcast. But I will be at Santa Anita all weekend. We've got a few edge runners and MyRacehorse as well with microshare on Saturday. Big weekend for MyRacehorse in general throughout the whole country.
All right. Thank you, Daniel. And also a thank you to Barb earlier that tuned in. A big thank you to those who have tuned in. And we'll try and maybe get a few questions from you before we close out. But, Joe, I'm going to come back to Friday, May 5th, the Grade 1 La Troienne, 63 caliber. She's had a big following since the get-go. And, she's amassed in excess of $250,000 in earnings. She's a 5-time winning daughter of Gunrunner, and disappointing run in the Houston Ladies Classic. Why not touch on that just for a moment for the folks? What was the excuse, if there was one, and what are your thoughts on her bouncing back in just this race?
Yeah, well, I'll start it off that I'm pretty confident she's going to bounce back. The way she's been training, she's had a pretty extensive work tab since that race, which was disappointing. I think when it came down to it, there was nothing that really pinpointed why she ran the way she did. She's handled shipping plenty of times before, so that wasn't really like, sometimes that's the easy thing to give the excuse of she shipped, new track. In the end, it wasn't her day. She never really had it from the get-go. I think we could all feel in the early stages of that race, it wasn't going to be her day. Did I ever think she was going to finish last in that field, beating the way she was? No, but I'm confident from the way she's training. She's 1-for-1 over the Churchill Downs main track. The one thing I'll say, we are running in a Grade 1. She is 30-1 for a reason for that. Now, can she pick up a slice in this race? Can she win? Absolutely, she can win. She can definitely upset, but it's going to be a big jump up that she has to take here, being realistic. You're facing some of the best fillies and mares in the game right now. And I think it's going to take a much higher than a career best to win this race. But I think if we could pick up a piece in here, we think of all the advantages and residual value this builds for her. She's already a graded stakes winner. So you could say, hey, why don't we just come back in a Grade 3? But coming back in a Grade 1 like this, if she can pick up a piece and here a slice or do even more, then you're really hitting the home run.
All right, we're looking at her comely victory back over Thanksgiving weekend at Aqueduct. Kendra Carmouche in the irons, of course, there. And that would be the third hat trick for her, essentially. And, when you look at the field for the La Troienne, the one thing that kind of stands out in my mind, and by the way, this race is the 9th on the docket. This race sponsored by presented by Twin Spires. She is in pole position number 3. So it's likely, as she gets Edgar Morales aboard this time around, would you say it's likely that she's going to be a bit more forwardly placed here? And by the way, Edgar's won 3 times aboard this daughter of Gunrunner, so that's a positive. But Would you think, being fresh legs, that she's likely going to show some of that natural speed that she's shown in the past?
Yes, but I do think there's some pace in this race. So I
Right.
think being down on the inside, she's going to be fresh. She's going to bounce out of there. But where that exactly puts her, I'm not 100% sure, to be honest. I think it's really going to come down to the break of what happens there. But I kind of guess when I look at this race, I see her sitting a third or fourth. But to me, when I look at this race, that's where I kind of see her in this race. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I actually think she runs well with the target to run at in front of her. And I think it could work out as an advantage.
Well, as you mentioned, she is a winner at Churchill. She's won 2 of 4 at the distance. And, you know, I think in a game in which you win 20, 25, 30% of the time, which means you're getting beat 80, 75, 70% of the time, let's accentuate the positives. She's raced well at Churchill. She's won 2 of 4 at the distance. Tom Amoss wins at 26% this year. Why not be positive? I mean, why not go in? And I know what you're saying. I know, look, this is a grade 1. We're far from coming into this race essentially on form on her A game. But how is she trained? I mean, I see a 47-4, a 59-4 with a strip there at Churchill. Isn't that a positive?
Oh, absolutely. She hasn't missed a beat since she's got back on the work tab. I mean, even when she was training down at Fairgrounds, she was doing extremely well. I mean, even you see those works of a minute flat at Fairgrounds. I mean, she's come and just hasn't missed a beat. And her last 2 works at Churchill were above average. The last work we saw, I thought she was just traveling with ease coming back 47-4. It didn't look like she was going that quick. So, again, I think she's going to run well. In a race like this, a 94 buyer, if she came back and fired back a 94 buyer, which I think would be huge, that could put you 5th in a race like this. So that's the $1 million question. For me, whenever you're coming into a grade 1, of course, as you mentioned, you'd hope you'd be coming off, say, your career best race versus possibly your career worst race. But I think the way that she's training gives you the confidence that she's going to come fire a big effort. And I hope, as I said, I mean, for everyone out there, if we could run 3rd in this race, what that will do for us is, I think, a pretty big accomplishment there, and then just set her up for the rest of the year. So, I mean, I think there's a big year ahead of her, and this is just a major stepping stone and major test for her as well.
Well, it's interesting to note that last year's winner, Pauline's Pearl, dispatched at 8-1. Since that time, well, she was last seen in the grade 1 Beholder Mile at Santa Anita, comes back for trainer Steve Asmussen. She's the intriguing one for me because the fact she's the defending champion. Now, granted, she was a better horse last year, but you're getting 8-1 on the morning line. As far as who is favored, well, there's a tepid favorite here, 3-1, Secret Oath. And, of course, Coach D. Wayne will be training and is training for MyRacehorse. Look forward to that son of Arrogate. Remind me of his name, Joe.
Seize the Gray.
Seize the Gray. I love that.
We had the opportunity to see him. I mean, I think he's grown quite a bit.
He's quite the man. Seize the Gray. But Secret Oath comes in. Well, that was a tough beat for her. Defeated by Clairiere. She will sans Lasix for this particular race, but she's won twice at Churchill, which is a positive, including the grade 1 Kentucky Oaks last year. So she's clearly the horse to beat. But as you handicap this race, you know, I'm all about putting, 63 caliber in the exotics. But talk to me about 2 key horses for you and how you would bet this race.
Yeah, well, I think Secret Oath is the deserving favorite. And the biggest thing that I think she's faced the toughest competition from a consistency standpoint by far. As you said, it was a very tough loss. I truly believe she's going to be very, very hard to beat in this race. She's handled the course. She's battle tested. Tyler Gaffleone's now got to know her twice. To me, she's just the horse to beat. I would probably key her on top and try to catch some prices underneath. The other interesting horse for me is Classy Edition of Todd Pletcher. This horse just kind of climbed the ladder here, and the last 2 races have been impressive. The Gulfstream Park form is always, for me, something I still don't think I've nailed down yet. I think a lot of times you see horses come out of the Gulfstream Park main track races and not translate. In the end, Todd is extremely good. This is actually a New York bred that started his career in New York and has handled from Saratoga to Belmont to Aqueduct. So that's what gives me the confidence that this horse will ship. And I think she's just continuing to rise up each and every start.
Yeah, I like that price. Again, she's coming off of that win in February. A shout out to Randall and Cece Barker. They're on the road to Louisville. I know that they're going to be celebrating out there on Friday on the road. Appreciate you tuning in here on My Racehorse Live. We're talking all things Derby. Had Larry Rivelli on a bit earlier with his two fills competing. Put together an all-star pick 5, Super Sarge Fecta. The horse that I think could be sneaky, Joe, Hannah, if you could scroll up to horse number 2, search results. And many of you may recognize the dam of this one. This is a half to our very own search engine. Search results, she hasn't been seen since the Grade 1 Breeders' Cup Distaff. I don't think Chad Brown is in this race for exercise. I think he's coming back knowing that she's training forwardly, had been training at Payson, comes off of that 5-panel spin at Churchill. She gets the respect of the morning line odds maker at 4-1, but I personally think she's going to be firing on all cylinders here. So I'm going to key some exactas, trifectas around Secret Oath, like you, Joe, and I'm going to include the 2, the 3, and I'm with you on Classy Edition. I love a horse that doesn't have to take their track with them, but Society could be the 7 whom I relegate underneath, because I think she comes off of a needed race. So there's some fun betting angles. The one thing that's so great about Friday, right, Oaks Day, is that you have an opportunity to essentially pad your bankrolls for Saturday. This is actually the start of a pick 5. So a 63 caliber were to be on your ticket, I can assure you're going to knock out quite a few, because she's going to be a generous price.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that's going to do it, my friend. I was wondering if perhaps we have any questions, any thoughts. Where are you going to be Saturday, Joe? I think you're going to be at Santa Anita, right?
Yeah, we have an event going on at Santa Anita. It's actually going to be hosted by Santa Anita in the Chandelier Room.
I didn't get that invite, but okay. Kidding.
Come on. And then we're going to be supported by 2 runners, MicroShare early on in the card, and then in the finale at Santa Anita. We got Yes This Time. I think both horses are training well coming into it. So we may not have one in the Kentucky Derby this year, but hopefully we can get a winner on Kentucky Derby Day.
Yeah, absolutely. Tickets are still available for that event on Saturday. Unfortunately for myself, I'm going to be in studio at FanDuel, but I'll be watching. And once again, Joe, as I often do, I'm living vicariously through you. I've enjoyed the past couple of weeks working the sales down there in Ocala, and looking forward to Maryland in a couple of weeks for Preakness Week, and then onward and upward. But, keep an eye out for the releases here from My Racehorse Edge. We've got some exciting prospects around the corner, and it should be a fun coming 12 months to see these horses go out and perform on the racetrack.
Absolutely. And all I'm going to say is on Sunday, I'll be looking for my collection of our pick 5.
I love it, Joe. Well, again, we appreciate those. I like your confidence, you see. Perhaps confidence games should be the horse we'd be talking about, but can't include them all. But a big thank you to each and every one of you. And Donna Bragg, need to win some cash from all the new offerings. That's the spirit. Bottom line, safe trip to all those horses out there. All right. That's going to do it, ladies and gentlemen. This salute goes to you. And we wish you a happy Derby week here on Derby on behalf of Hannah Bloom, who makes this show possible, in addition to Joe Moran and My Racehorse. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, may you run for the roses. Take care.